Shawn Doyle is a learning and development professional who has a passion for human potential. He spent the last 24 years implementing training programs that help people become more effective at work and in their lives. Author of over 15 books, Shawn talks with us about his recent book, Jumpstart Your Leadership, 10 Jolts to Leverage Your Leadership. Shawn, you've written a book called Jumpstart Your Leadership, which is part of a series, and it's so practical. I wished I'd had this book years ago when I was managing people. How did you decide to write this book on leadership?
I wrote this book because I travel all over the country. I speak about 120 days a year, and I mainly specialize in half-day and full-day leadership development programs. About 80% of my practice is leadership. And what I find is that there are people in these classrooms that have been in a leadership role for 10 years. And when I say, well, you've been a leader for how long? 10 years. How many people report to you? 16. And how much leadership development have you had? This is the first time.
Astounding.
It staggers me to think that, this poor person is leading a group of 16 people and they don't know how. And so I think what happens is a lot of companies, well-meaning, promote people that are technically competent, but we assume wrongly that they know how to lead, and that's a whole separate skill set.
I can imagine it's almost like being a professional football player, and you might be the best player on the team. That doesn't mean you'd be the best coach.
I also feel like everybody who works at a company or an organization or a nonprofit, doesn't matter where you work, really deserves to have somebody who's leading them skillfully because of the impact that person can have. And you go to a party or an event or networking, talk to anybody and mention the word boss, and they say, oh, well, have I got a story for you? And unfortunately, most of them are negative. But every now and then you get that shining gem of a person who says, oh, I got to tell you, I worked for this person, and they were like the greatest boss ever. They helped me develop. They helped me grow. They influenced my career. They influenced my life. They built me up. They motivated me. They inspired me. But unfortunately, most people have the opposite. So I wanted to give people a very simple book talking about what are the 10 key elements of effective leadership. And I really feel like if you're in a leadership role, it at least will give you some of those foundational principles that you can start working on right away.
And talk about a few of those foundational principles. I mean, you do a great job of laying out all of the different layers of those principles in the book and how to put them into place. But just highlight one or two for us, because I think it's important.
Well, I think one of the things is, mission, vision, and values. I've worked a lot for many years in corporate America, and there's some companies that have mission, vision statements, and I ask the employees what they are, and they're like, synergizing. We will be the. I don't know. It's on a plaque in the lobby. I'm like, but what does it say? I said, I don't know. And, we didn't memorize it or anything. I'm like, but why do we have one? It's kind of like saying, we're going on the Appalachian Trail and we're going north or we're going south. And there's a map and there's a destination and there's a place we're going. I just find that there's so many companies that have mission, vision, and value statements, but nobody knows what they mean or how it impacts how we do business. So I think one of the most powerful things you can do as a leader is to say, I'm not talking about necessarily even the CEO. I'm just talking about, let's say you're, a marketing manager and you got, 6 people reporting to you in the marketing department. Well, that marketing department should have a mission and a vision and a plan, because really people that report to you in a leadership role, they want to know, where are we going? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And so having that can be so powerful, and it also helps you make much better decisions, because everything that comes across your desk, you then say, is this aligned with what we're trying to do? Our mission, our vision, and our values?
Right.
And then you take your individual team mission, vision, and values and align that with the corporate one. Now you got something real powerful, because then people can start talking about, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? And there's some sort of direction to create a framework for that to all be tied together.
And if they know what the direction is, and they're empowered now because they have a clear mission and vision, it empowers people to take ownership in their job, does it not, and do a better job?
Yeah, then we don't hear that, well, you weren't here, so we couldn't make a decision.
Right.
Well, no, we know where we're going. We know what the plan is. So, make it happen.
Right.
I think the other one, Rich, is there's so many people out there that are just massively underdeveloped. I remember very clearly when I had 16 people reporting to me, saying to one of the folks that reported to me, you know, what do you want to be short term, midterm, long term? You're in terms of your career goals. And she just sat there with her mouth open, and she was very embarrassed. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, well, I'm 50 years old. And in my whole career, I've never had anyone ever ask me what I want. Short, midterm, long term. And you're asking me why? I said, because I want to help you develop. She's like, I'm stunned. I don't even know how to answer that question.
In all of your books and in your presentations, you emphasize the concept or the principle of being a lifelong learner. Expand on the lifelong learner principle.
That's a great point, Rich. And I'm very passionate about this point. You know, commencement, the word commencement, you know, we go to graduation at high school or college, and we go to a commencement ceremony. People think that commencement means that we're done. And if you look up the definition of the word commencement, it actually means to start, not that you're done. So I believe that in today's fast-paced environment where things are constantly changing so rapidly, you can't possibly graduate with a degree in any topic and stay up to speed where you should be without continuing to grow, develop, and learn. And the analogy I use with that is I would hate to go to a doctor who never goes to another medical training program once he graduates from medical school. That would scare the daylights out of me. So I think that a competitive advantage for any leader is to continue to grow and learn, and also to ensure that everybody on their team is growing and learning, and not to make that an optional activity, but a requirement. And that needs to be very clear right up front when they're interviewed to say, if you come on board this team, you're going to be growing, you're going to be learning, you're going to have an individual development plan. And if you don't like that, then you probably shouldn't be part of this team. But imagine the power of that when people are learning and growing, how much that contributes to morale, and the skill sets of your team is huge.
Absolutely. And I would think that that charges the motivation of every individual to do a better job, knowing that they're going to be rewarded with even more development as it goes along.
And an interesting little curve to that, Rich, is the newer generation, Generation X and Generation Y. All the research shows that they're not going to stay at the company forever and collect the gold watch at the end. They're going to stay at a company to get new skills. And as long as they're getting new skills, they'll stay longer. But if they're not getting new skills, they'll leave sooner. So it's also a great retention strategy for the younger generation to stay longer. Instead of leaving maybe in 3 years, maybe they'll leave in 6. But that means we got that great employee, you know, twice what we would have gotten them by investing in their development.
And the leadership that you talk about in this book, Jumpstart Your Leadership, is not just about the CEO or president of the company. We're talking about a lot of lower-level employees as well, are we not?
Here's what often happens in corporate America, unfortunately. People say, oh, well, Joe left. Oh, my gosh, Joe left. He went to another company. What a shock. Now, who do we replace Joe with? Gee, I don't know. But if you're developing people all along, then when Joe gets promoted, we've got a whole team of people that we can pick from that have been developed in place that can replace Joe. Now we're not in a blind panic trying to figure out who's going to fill that slot.
I think if someone takes this book and the principles in it and applies them seriously, they're going to see real change. Do you have a couple of examples of changes you've seen in leaders or in companies after going through and implementing these principles?
Absolutely. Many of my clients, you know, I have something called a Jumpstart Your Leadership program. It's a 6-day program that's spread out over a 6-month period. And, you know, we do one day and then there's a month break where they're reading and studying and applying. And then we do another day for a 6-month period. And a lot of managers will come back and say, you know, I don't know what you did with Rich. You know, he wasn't really a very talented leader before, but this 6-month process of him reading and studying and learning and growing and case studies and phone calls, and he's just changed. I don't know what you did, but something's different. It's not magic. It's just that when anytime any of us focuses our effort on a specific skill set, we're going to get better at it. And so the idea behind this book is just to give people those real simple 10 executable skill sets that they can work on, at least on a fundamental level. And so we've had lots of successes with that. And I think part of it's just the fact that they're being focused for 6 months on a topic very intensely and deciding to be a better leader. But more importantly, not just deciding, but actually now knowing how. This book is very much about how to, not just about philosophies and concepts and theories.
You've been listening to an interview with Shawn Doyle, author of Jumpstart Your Leadership, 10 Jolts to Leverage Your Leadership. Also available as an audiobook at Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. Visit Shawn on the web at sldoyle.com.